morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's webinar on the 12th edition of the AMSP, NAPL, NAQP State of the Industry Report. Thank you for joining us, and thanks also to our generous sponsors, Canon and KBA, for making both the report and this webinar possible. This year's report covers three topics: current and expected business conditions, including a look at key business indicators such as sales, price trends, profitability trends, the outlook for the economy, and the outlook for our industry. We look at the future of print, which we will see is increasingly tied to personalized, relevant communication, our ability to define precisely the value print delivers, and our ability to communicate that value to clients, never assuming they just get it. And finally, we'll talk about the core of the report, which I call winning the future, because it's not enough just to know what the future is going to look like, ladies and gentlemen. We also have to know what we have to do to win that future, to participate in that future. And this year's State of the Industry report emphasizes that winning the future is not about company size or equipment configuration or ownership structure. And it's certainly not about what a company calls itself. Rather, it's about must-dos, such as hearing and acting on the voice of the customer, creating a culture of innovation, and I'll tell you what that means, and identifying and addressing our internal barriers to profitable growth. Over 325 companies participated in the surveys that supported this year's report. As always, they are a very diverse group. We insist on hearing from a broad range of participants with varied opinions and varied experiences. Annual sales range from under $1 million to over $150 million. Some are broadly diversified. Some still get nearly all of their revenue from print. Some provide many varied services to many varied markets. Others are specialists who focus on a few services and a few markets. But in all cases, they didn't just check a few boxes. They thoroughly answered tough questions about our industry, their companies, and where both are headed. So let's start with a look at key indicators. We're finally growing again. We open the report with this graphic, ladies and gentlemen, which tracks the percent change in our industry's total sales. And again, those of you who follow our reports and our research know we talk about total sales, everything we do, not just printing. Total industry sales are finally growing again. The gains have been modest. Sales were up just 2.7% last quarter. But they are, in fact, our strongest performance since way back in 2007. It's the first time since then that we've grown 4 consecutive quarters. As always, results vary dramatically from company to company. That is, and again, those of you who follow our reports regularly know that we always emphasize industry results tell us absolutely nothing about individual companies' performance or prospects. Some companies far exceed industry results, while others fall far short. And so far this year, although industry sales are up only 2.2%, the top 20% of our survey group have grown at least 17%, while the bottom 20% report declines in sales of at least 4%. And while 25% report business has picked up enough to increase payroll hours, 26% report business has slowed enough to cut hours. Bottom line, though, ladies and gentlemen, is that despite the dramatic variation in performance from company to company, companies growing at double digits, companies still declining, despite that dramatic variation, there's no mistaking that overall our industry's trend is finally up. We also emphasize in the report that it's important to keep these gains in perspective. At $80.4 billion, our total sales, again, from all sources, not just printing, our total sales are up 3.2% since 2011, but are still nearly 19% below Great Recession levels of $99 billion. So despite the recent gains, we have an awful lot of ground to make up, and despite the recent gains, there's a whole lot of idle capacity still out there, and that's, of course, why prices are still under pressure. 61% of our State of the Industry participants report prices are still at or below year-earlier levels, and companies of all sizes and of all types emphasize that margins for error are still wafer thin, and that an organization-wide watch every dollar approach to business is still essential to growing the bottom line. Despite the recent increases in sales, almost 54% of our State of the Industry group report that pre-tax profitability is still at or below year-earlier levels, and the pressure on profits is even greater than these numbers suggest, ladies and gentlemen, because overwhelmingly where profitability is up, it's almost always because of something a company has done to increase revenue, decrease costs, increase efficiency and productivity, rather than any moderation in competition. So I describe the current business environment very simply as better, but far from takeoff speed, where by takeoff speed I mean those consistently healthy gains that boost prices and profitability and encourage hiring. Here's how your peers describe current conditions, and you'll see many, many more comments of this nature in the report. It's better, business is better than a year ago, it clearly is, but not steady enough for comfort. There is more business out there, but with lower margins. Business is up, but pricing is still a major factor. Still too many bottom feeders. Still not enough work to go around. And then we hear many, many comments about the inconsistency of business, ladies and gentlemen. Feast or famine. We have periods of excess capacity followed by periods in which we have to turn work away. Again, better, but far from takeoff speed. And we also emphasize in the report that we can't count on consolidation to make everything right. We've lost nearly 5,000 establishments since 2007 and over 9,300 establishments since 2000. And there is still a misconception that we're going to settle into a stable equilibrium once enough companies go out of business. And what we emphasize in the report is that that might be true were the competition only other printers, but it's not anymore. As the internet and digitization break down boundaries, letting everyone into everyone else's business, we're now competing in new ways with people we've never had to compete with before. That is why our industry is getting more competitive, not less competitive, despite record consolidation. And moreover, we don't hear a lot about this, ladies and gentlemen, but new companies are entering our industry. The U.S. Commerce Department, and again, you'll see this in detail in the report itself, but the U.S. Commerce Department estimates that our birth rate, that is the creation of new companies each year, is about 5.3%. Now that is well below our death rate of 9.7%, which of course is why the establishment count is shrinking. But that should be little consolation because the companies entering our industry are a new breed of nimble, flexible competitor, unencumbered by the legacy equipment, systems, and most important, the legacy mindsets of the companies they are replacing. So, as we emphasize in the report, we aren't simply swapping two traditional printing companies for one. And that's why we say waiting to be the last man standing, so to speak, or waiting for consolidation to solve our problems just isn't going to happen. We talk about the economy in the report very briefly, but it's important to talk about the economy because as the last 7 years have reminded us, if one thing hasn't changed about the industry, it's our dependence on the economy. And many of us would agree with the state of the industry participant who sort of summarized his whole take on the economy as, you know, Andy, the government saying we are out of recession is absolute nonsense. And it may seem like nonsense, but in fact the government is right because technically the end of recession simply means the economy has stopped contracting, has stopped shrinking, that the bleeding has stopped. Not that all's well. People ask me all the time, Andy, when is the recession going to end? And I respond, well, is that what you want to know, or do you want to know when business is really going to be robust again? Because they're two different events. Economic recovery can be vigorous, or it can be feeble, or it can be anything in between. And as we all know, recovery from the Great Recession has been painfully slow and inconsistent, but it is recovery. The economy is clearly stronger than it was a year ago. And we see that when we look at GDP or consumer spending or business investment, whether in equipment and software or plant and structures, and we even see it when we look at exports. Now in the report itself, you'll read about why recovery from the Great Recession has been so painfully and inconsistently slow. But for our purposes today, the point is that the economy is recovering. The consensus, the blue chip economic indicators consensus, is that by the end of 2015, the economy will be growing at a 3% rate again. Still not where we were in the 10 years prior to the Great Recession, but a significant improvement over where the economy has been. The other point we make in the report is that, yeah, that's improvement, yeah, that's encouraging, but that's not enough to solve anyone's problems. The outlook for the industry itself, we expect sales to grow 2 to 3% this year. Right now, we're right in the middle of that range, right around 2.5%. We expect growth to bump up to a 2.5 to 3% pace next year. If we get a little more pricing power, if the economy is a little stronger than expected, we end up toward the top of that range, maybe even a little higher. And again, back in the day, that wouldn't really have excited anyone. But considering where we've been, and you can trace our progress in the table on the right-hand side of this slide, considering where we've been, that's encouraging. 2008, 2009, we were in absolute free fall. 2010, 11, 12, and for the first 3 quarters of last year, we bounced along bottom. And finally, starting just about a year ago, 4th quarter of 2013, we began to grow consistently again, albeit modestly, but better than anything we've seen in a long time. Not going to solve anyone's problems, but definite progress. And one of the points we also make in the report is, quite frankly, if your sales are still declining, that's a red flag. You really need to take a careful look at what's happening, because industry-wide, we're growing again, albeit modestly, but we are growing again. And every indication is that growth will continue at a slightly higher pace, maybe as high as 3.5% in 2015. And that's basically the first chapter of our report, where we are. Again, there's a lot more to it, but I just want to give you the highlights of it. Second chapter takes a look at the future of print, and like the rest of the report, focuses on what we have to do to win that future. Again, those of you who have been with us a while, who have participated in our research, or if not participated, at least read the reports, you know our reports are not about finding the next big thing. They're not about easy answers. They're not about catching the next hot market. They're about thinking very, very carefully about our industry, about our companies, about our future, and evaluating what we've got to do to win that future, to grow market share and to retain market share. And we start that right off in Chapter 2, titled of how a printed product, I'm sorry, I lost my screen here. Can you give me an example of how a printed product can do more for clients than it used to? And as you might imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the future of print opinions vary widely. You'll read in the report that we have participants who expect an absolute revitalization as people come back to print for its power to get their message noticed everywhere from the mailbox to the retail aisle. And we had people who don't expect a revitalization, but rather do see some potential in specialties such as personalized direct mail and promotion printing, because customized content delivers unique value, and things like tags and labels and packaging, because with the economy picking up, there's more demand for production, more things have to be packaged, more things have to be labeled. Physical products still need to be packaged and labeled. And then, as you'll see, we have plenty of others who do not see anything positive and predict that, and I quote, print will continue to decline. You'll see in the report early in Chapter 2 a graphic depicting their survey group's response to our question about demand for print. And again, I don't think I'm surprising you when I tell you that the overwhelming majority, 82%, either expect the overall demand to hold around current levels or to decline. Just 8% expect demand to increase, and then you've got the 5% who aren't sure what's going to happen. And just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about the demand for print, and this is very clear in the report, we are talking about all processes, not just lithography.
Sorry about this. We lost video, and we're trying to fix this right now.
I'm going to let Carol in, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry.
Fix this.
We're trying to fix this. It's not showing your screen. Sorry, it's not showing Andy's screen.
Your computer?
You're not logged on here. We're gonna run it off my computer, so please bear with us.
We apologize, ladies and gentlemen. We'll pick up right here with our discussion of the future of print. And again, these are the highlights. Be on the lookout for the report. You'll get it. It's in production right now. So you'll be receiving a copy, and a complimentary copy, as a member of the association. And this is what to look for.
Okay, you're on.
All right. Here we go.
Can we use this one too?
This one to go? All right, ladies and gentlemen, again,
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Carol. As we were discussing the demand for print, you notice that we have a little over half of our group, 54.6%, who do not expect the demand to decline. And they believe two factors will offset shorter runs and electronic alternatives to print. One, a healthier economy. And again, it's not that anyone expects the economy to give print the kind of lift it once did. They just expect the economy to be less of a drag over the next 3 years than it's been over the last 3 years, and I completely agree with that assessment. And the second reason is the willingness of more companies to give print, particularly promotional printing, a second look. And we heard a lot of comments like these, ladies and gentlemen. People are beginning to understand electronic messages really do not sell, or at least they don't sell by themselves. And there is so much electronic clutter that any printed piece that delivers relevant content will be valued. I thought that was a very, very interesting perspective. We asked about which products and processes you believe have the most growth potential over the next 3 years. And you'll see in the report, there was a full 25 to 26% of our research group who said none of them do, who don't see potential anywhere. But they aren't the only voice. Our survey group listed a number of services and processes that they believe have growth potential, that they are excited about. The 5 most frequently cited services and the 3 most frequently cited processes are listed on this slide. You'll see the complete listing in the report. And the consensus was, despite the broad range of opinion, there was a consensus, and the consensus was that print has a future, and that future is increasingly tied to personalized, relevant communication. And again, you're going to see all kinds of comments like this in the report. Customized content delivers unique value. The more you can connect with them, the more the resistance drops. What about lithography? Whenever we're talking about this kind of thing, the future of print, processes that have the most potential, I feel it's important to clarify lithography's role. As you'll read in the report, just 8% include sheet-fed offset, and just 2.1% include either heat set or non-heat set on their list of processes with the most growth potential. But again, ladies and gentlemen, interpret this carefully. That doesn't mean they're giving up on lithography or believe it has no potential. It simply means they don't believe it has the most growth potential. And as you'll read in the report, lithography is still an approximately $40 billion market, ladies and gentlemen. It's hardly insignificant. The issue is who's going to get all that work, and as we write, it's the fastest because turn times continue to shrink. It's the most efficient, as one of your peers said. Any printer caught with old technology in the press room is doomed because our new industry is far too competitive, despite record consolidation. I told you why. Far too competitive to pass inefficiencies onto clients. And it will be the best not at printing, but at putting print to work for their clients who captures the lion's share of that offset, $40 billion offset lithographic market. As I mentioned, though, when we talk to your peers about the future of print, where the action is, where the greatest excitement is, the consensus formed around 2 words: targeted, relevant. Creating value by helping clients build access and manage databases. You'll read in the report about QR codes on packaging that link to background information about ingredients, responsible sourcing, and other issues important to the purchaser of whatever it is that's in that package. QR codes on business cards that help create databases of relevance to the end users. Pearls on direct mail to provide immediate feedback on the success or failure of the piece. And here in the report, I quote John Wanamaker. Remember John Wanamaker from Chicago? who said half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half. Well, with the kind of tools we now have for personalized, relevant printing and tracking results, we have an historic opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to answer Wanamaker's question by showing clients which half is which. And what was most exciting, or I should say what is most exciting, and I know has the folks who participate in our research very enthusiastic, or at least the majority of them, very enthusiastic about Print's future, is that, remember, ladies and gentlemen, all of this is in its infancy. I mean, databases on every subject imaginable are going to grow in size and detail and precision. Our ability to access those databases and manipulate them are going to create opportunities for personalization and relevance far beyond anything we can imagine today. Now, to cash in, we're going to have some very specific skills on accessing, creating, and managing complex databases, but from everything you'll read in the report and everything many of your peers are saying, the investment will be well worth it. One of the other, well, I personally, again, you decide yourself, ladies and gentlemen, when you read the report, but I thought one of the most significant results of this discussion of Print's future was the growing number of companies that spoke about print as a form of communication rather than a standalone service defined by how it's manufactured. No result of our research was more significant than the growing number of companies that began to view print and describe print as a form of distributing communication that needs to be viewed as one source among many options, not the product of a sheet-fed press or an offset press or a digital press, but as a form of communication. And that says three things, three very important things about our industry's future. It says that anything affecting how people communicate affects us. It says whether a change complements or displaces print depends exactly on what is being communicated and the preferences not of us, but of the target audience, how they prefer to receive that communication. And most important, ladies and gentlemen, and again, you'll read all about this in the report, while we don't have to become communications futurists, and I'm quoting the report here, we don't have to become communication futurists, but we do have to stay on top of major developments in communications by regularly asking these questions. How are my clients' communications options changing? How are their communications preferences changing? And how will those changes affect me? Another thing I thought was very, very significant, you'll read about it in the report, is that it was very clear that there is no single path to success in this industry, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have to be this kind of company rather than that kind of company. You will read about success stories in our report who have diversified extensively. And I quote, print will become our ancillary offering. The highest value comes from combining multiple competencies, such as consumer targeting, unique material, innovative design, and effective fulfillment. You'll read about success stories who aren't finding themselves. I quote, we are transitioning to digital delivery by marketing a mobile platform to deliver manuals, brochures, training, and diagnostics. And you will read about companies that are successful sticking with printing because that's what they know best and that's what they do best. No single path to success. What is necessary, ladies and gentlemen, is that we do three things. We've got to decide exactly what kind of company we want to be. by carefully evaluating not what's working for somebody else, not what's hot, but by carefully evaluating our specific circumstances, resources, and goals, by defining our value proposition carefully, and by understanding what it really takes to prosper with that value proposition. Chapter 3 goes further in talking about winning the future. So we've already started to talk about the kinds of things. We talked about print's future. We talked about the industry's future. We already started in Chapter 2 to talk about the kinds of things we have to do. I don't care how we define ourselves. It's not a matter of company size, not a matter of equipment configuration, not a matter of ownership structure, not a matter of whether I call myself this or that or the next thing. We already started talking about the kinds of things we have to do to get on the right side of the market redistribution, to gain market share and retain market share, to win the future. And we open Chapter 3 with this. Our industry has a future, ladies and gentlemen, so does print. Company size, equipment configuration, and ownership structure will not determine who shares in that future. Neither will what a company calls itself. Here are 3 factors that will, or I should say 3 more factors that will. Hearing the voice of our customer, because that is where value creation starts. And as one of your peers, whom I quote in the report extensively, said so well, value creation still trumps everything else. Creating a culture of innovation, and again, I'll tell you what that means, because in our increasingly competitive, complex business, ladies and gentlemen, we're either getting better or we're falling behind. And finally, identifying and correcting our internal barriers to profitable growth. It's much easier to blame disappointing results on the economy or the industry or the price cutter down the road or these ignorant, uninformed print buyers. It's a lot harder to look carefully at our operations and identify and address what's holding us back internally. Because as we discussed earlier, ladies and gentlemen, the economy is not going to correct them for us, and consolidation is not going to correct them for us. So this is what we go into in depth in Chapter 3. Hearing the voice of our best customers, again, I'll give you the highlights, and you see, this report is, you know, if you're looking for what industry, market to get in or what technology to get into, this is not the report for you. If you're looking for the kinds of things you have to do to gain and retain market share, the kinds of questions you have to ask, the kinds of issues you have to address, then this is the report for you. Anyway, Chapter 3, we take each of those points one by one, hearing the voice of our best clients, because it's important to know what's happening with technology. It's more important to know what's happening with our best clients, and never assuming that we already know. I call assuming that we already know what the client needs, ladies and gentlemen. I call that the fatal conceit, because that is an absolutely deadly assumption. More companies have been driven out of business because they assumed they knew what the client wanted than you can count. And we quote a whole lot of people in the report, and one of the people I quote is Mark Twain on this point of never assuming that we already know what the client wants, what the client values most. Mark Twain said, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." You'll read in depth about how your peers collect client feedback, and they collect it in many, many, many ways. You know, obviously starting with employees who interface with, are regularly in touch with clients, periodic business reviews with clients, various sundry educational events, client communities, they're up on this stuff, and forums, client feedback portals, things like Get Satisfaction, User Voice. They collect client feedback in many, many ways. The problem is, ladies and gentlemen, that collecting feedback is only part of the story. There is also the issue of the quality of the feedback. Is it game-changing insight that shows how to be even more valuable to clients, or is it generalities that really don't tell us much of anything? And then, of course, there's the issue of follow-up. If we're not going to do anything with the information we're collecting from clients, let's not bother to collect it. And you'll read all about that in the report. After all, even the most relevant, insightful information is not power unless we act on it. You'll read in the report about, and we drilled down, we challenged people. We do that with our surveys. We challenge people. And we challenge them to talk about what would most improve the quality of their client feedback. And we challenge them to talk about what would most improve their ability to respond to and act on client feedback. You'll read about it in the report. An example, improving quality feedback, they said, you know what we have to do, Andy? We have to train our salespeople to actually ask the right questions and stop being order takers. We have to collect the feedback more consistently. We have to make it a must-do rather than a will-do if we have time, which we never seem to have. We have to train salespeople to shut their mouths and listen a little more effectively to clients. Ask the right questions and then actually listen to what the clients are saying. And then hearing from a more diverse range of clients, a broader range of clients. All the kinds of things we have to do to improve the quality of client feedback, to understand in more depth what the client really needs. That's where value creation starts. You read all about it in the report, much, much more in the report. The second issue is this idea of a culture of innovation. And as I said, a culture of innovation is not about finding the next big thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's not about trying to cash in on the hot market or the hot technology or the hot product or service. Rather, it's about encouraging employees to find ways to do their jobs even a little better and to reject the "we've always done it that way" mentality. We cannot tolerate that mentality anymore. Our industry has gotten far too competitive and complex to tolerate anywhere in our organizations either a "we've always done it that way" mentality or if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. You'll read in the report about 10 essentials, 10 defining characteristics of a culture of innovation. You'll read about the challenges. Now, I personally picked up the phone and interviewed a number of your peers who, through great effort, have established a culture of innovation. And they talked to me in depth about what the culture requires, and they talked to me in depth about the challenges. And they will tell you, as they told me, and as you will read in the report, that creating a culture of innovation is never 100% successful. You will always have employees who don't want to embrace change and who get offensive instead. They talk to me about this idea of tribal knowledge. And by tribal knowledge, they mean knowledge that kind of is floating around in the head of only a single employee or a few employees, but yet is essential to the success of the organization. So if that employee or group of employees leaves, you're stuck. That information goes with her or him. And they talk to me about how one of the essentials of a culture of innovation is to capture that tribal knowledge, to make sure it doesn't walk out the door with the employee. And that's hard to do because, as you know, many see tribal knowledge as job security. And then they have folks whose response to this entire culture of innovation effort is, I don't see any benefit to this. You're just messing with the way I do this. And you'll read in depth about the biggest single challenge of creating a culture of innovation: replacing management and supervisory personnel who will not commit to the culture. Not every employee is going to commit to a culture of innovation. Not every employee has to commit. If we get a good set of employees committed to the culture, thinking about their jobs, asking how can we do this more efficiently, it's going to work. However, the folks who have been most successful at creating and sustaining, not just creating, but sustaining a culture of innovation assure me that every man and woman on that management team has to be fully committed to the program. And you will read in the report a summary of a long interview I did with a gentleman who described the difficulties of having to let go a long-time valued production manager who could just not get with the program. But it was essential, and over time it was something that the company had to do. So in the report, you'll read all about how to establish a culture of innovation, the difficulties of doing it, and the value of doing it, all based on in-depth interviews with your peers who have already had remarkable success in this area. And I will quote one of those peers right now, who again, were you to talk to him, would tell you, man, Andy, there is nothing easy about this, but it's something we had to do. And to me, he has the last word on this whole issue. And this exact quote will be in the report, ladies and gentlemen. I explained to my employees that the only way to be successful is to evolve. I ask them, if we stand right here and time continues to move, what happens? And they say we die. And I say, that's right. And I explain, we're never going to make perfect decisions, but if we're only incrementally better than standing still, at least we're moving forward. And that is essential in our industry today. That is essential in our industry today. If you haven't cultivated this ability to be flexible and adaptable and to evolve over the long run, you aren't going to make it. Not my words, ladies and gentlemen, the words of one of your peers, speaking for many of your peers, whom you will read about in the State of the Industry report. The third issue we address in Chapter 3 in this discussion of winning the future is what I call identifying and addressing our internal barriers to profitable growth. And again, I'm going to quote the report, ladies and gentlemen. You'll see that Chapter 3, when we begin to discuss internal barriers to profitable growth, you'll read the following. We aren't going to make it if we don't identify and address our internal barriers to profitable growth either. We all have them. The trouble is, it's much easier to blame disappointing results on what's happening outside. The economy, the declining demand for lithography, the postal service, all those desperate price cutters, all those uneducated, uninformed print buyers. Much easier to blame disappointing results on what's happening outside than what's happening inside. And as usual, one of your peers puts it best, sure, conditions are tough, but we have to stop using that as an excuse. Our State of the Industry participants identified over 20 barriers to internal growth. Over 20 internal barriers to profitable growth. You'll see all 20 of them listed in the report. They were very frank, very candid about it, spoke very, very lucidly and compellingly about what's holding them back internally. And that was my instruction to them. I don't want to hear about the economy. I don't want to hear about the Postal Service. I want to hear about what's holding you back internally, what you have to do better. You'll read about over 20 in the report. Here are the 5 most frequently cited. Now notice, ladies and gentlemen, the single most frequently cited barrier to profitable growth is on the revenue creation side. Sales reps who lack the skills, motivation our industry now requires, number 1. Marketing, number 2. Sales management, ineffective sales management, number 3. So 3 of the top 5 relate to revenue creation. Now understand, ladies and gentlemen, and again, you'll read this in the report, that none of these people, none of these folks, none of your peers say that they are going to be abandoning cost reduction, cost management, debt management, cash management. They're all going to keep doing that because they have to. It's essential. But they were very clear that, listen, we cannot cut our way to prosperity. We need to be addressing the internal barriers that are preventing us from growing revenue the way we need to grow revenue. You'll notice here at number 4, ladies and gentlemen, adjusting to peaks and valleys in business. That was the only production-related barrier in the top 5. In fact, I think it was the only production-related barrier in the top 10. And it got back to that point we raised earlier about the inconsistency in growth, the inconsistency in activity. Remember that quote about feast or famine? We have periods of excess capacity followed by periods in which we have to turn work away. Well, that's what this internal barrier is about. Smoothing those peaks and valleys, trying to minimize the times when we're caught with too much overtime, when business unexpectedly turns up, and too many idle hands when it unexpectedly turns down, because either way, profitability takes a hit. Internal barriers to profitable growth. You read all about them in the report, and you'll read all about the kinds of simple but effective actions we can take to address them. And we close Chapter 3, this discussion of the future of our industry, the future of print, with this comment. Ultimately, the future of print will be determined by the value it delivers and our ability to measure and communicate that value to clients and prospects. Equipment, software, consumables, substrates will all continue to advance, allowing us to create even more visually powerful printing, faster and more economically, but none of that is going to make much of a difference if we can't show clients and prospects exactly how they benefit from the power of print. And in the report, we talk about that 3-step process: understand, solve, document. Understand the problem, yes. Solve the problem by all means, but that is not enough. Understand, solve, document. Show that client exactly how they benefit from doing business with you, how much time you've saved them, how much you've saved them in costs, how much you've increased their revenue, how much you've increased traffic to their website or return to their direct mail campaign. And we have to be prepared to show clients exactly that. And we have to be, the bottom bullet here, ladies and gentlemen, prepared to talk to them about how they will benefit from our capabilities, not simply our capabilities. Are we going to be prepared to talk to them about how they will benefit from our capabilities, or are we just prepared, as quite frankly too many in our industry are, to talk about our capabilities themselves? And Chapter 4 kind of wraps it all up. I simply call it Ideas for Action to create clarity and relevance, One of the things you'll read about in the report is how we are in a period of great uncertainty. Too many in our industry are waiting for the uncertainty to lift, for things to settle down. That is their mistake. That is their mistake and our opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, because in times of great uncertainty, the opportunity is to create clarity, not to wait for clarity. And too many in our industry are waiting for clarity. And we create clarity and we create relevance by listening careful to clients and employees, drawing on their knowledge and acting on what we learn. And by looking inside our companies and asking tough questions about what's holding us back. You know, tough questions that, frankly, we'd probably rather not ask. And as you read the State of the Industry report, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see a couple of themes threaded throughout the text. Number one is the kind of thing we have to embrace as an organization, the kinds of points we have to make sure everyone in our organization understands, the kinds of things we have to get across, not just to our management team, but to every employee. The second theme is drawing on all the expertise and knowledge of our employees, because they have a lot. And as one of your peers says so well, one of the keys to winning the future is drawing on all our expertise from the corner office right down to the shop floor. So you'll see those themes weaved throughout the report. In Chapter 4, you're just going to read one idea for action after the next, all related to creating clarity, all relating to hearing the voice of the best customer, showing that customer how they benefit, he or she benefits from doing business with us. We're going to talk about root cause analysis. Instead of solving the same problem over and over, here's a way to solve it once and for all. One of the things we talk about in the report is, if you've got this time to solve the same problem over and over, why can't you find the time to solve it for good with root cause analysis? How to evaluate client feedback, something called the Net Promoter Score, a client satisfaction survey that has only 2 questions, including the single most important question you can ask any client. Why we should never keep customer feedback a secret. Two colossal mistakes companies make with customer feedback, ladies and gentlemen. Either they don't do anything with it, or they don't share it with employees. Keeping an ear to the social media ground. Employee incentive programs, employee advisory programs, evaluating opportunities. One of the things that came through very clearly in the report, ladies and gentlemen, your peers shared with me very clearly, is that their issue is not a lack of opportunities, ladies and gentlemen. Their issue is deciding what really is an opportunity, because they know they can't chase every shiny thing that comes floating by. And in the report, we have an idea for action that relates to how to evaluate opportunities, how to decide what really is an opportunity for me, given my company's specific resources, services, and goals. Listen and respond, customer advisory council, what's in our way meetings, all in Chapter 4, all simple, effective actions every one of us can do right now to win the future. And finally, we close the report, or technically we open the report. I think these are the first 2 pages. I just decided to close the webinar this way. We closed the survey, the State of the Industry survey, with this question. What's most important for us to know about the state of the industry? I just asked you a whole bunch of questions. You responded. I have one more question for you. What is most important for us to know about the state of the industry? You'll read about the insightful, compelling, thoughtful responses in the report. Let me just give you a few to give you a flavor for what your peers are thinking and how they're approaching their businesses in our industry. What's most important for us to know about the state of the industry? We have to offer services that help customers find new customers and retain them. We also have to provide analytics to reduce waste, increase ROI, and allow for targeted mailing. Notice the word analytics, ladies and gentlemen. That's documenting. That's showing that client specifically how they benefit from doing business with you. We have to become an extension of our customers. We have to work in harmony with them to achieve their desired results on all communications fronts. Notice the word communications, ladies and gentlemen. Not, I'm a sheet-fed printer, I'm a web printer, I'm a digital printer. I am part of the communications industry, and my job is to help my clients communicate more effectively with their clients, and I have more ways to do that than ever. We have to make everyone crystal clear that we aren't in Kansas anymore. This is a new industry. These are the kinds of points we have to get across to our staff. Well, I like this one a lot. This is the tough love thing. In almost all cases, our challenges, this gentleman or lady, I'm sorry, lady, was talking about her internal barriers to profitable growth. And she said to me, in almost all cases, our challenges can be attributed to staff. We are training those with potential and the right attitude, and I should have put this in bold, we are replacing those with potential and the wrong attitude. Get with the program. We don't have the margin for error to carry you anymore. Now more than the past 20 years, embracing change to meet customer needs is crucial. People and systems have to be highly responsive. And I love this one. What are you doing to win the future? We are sending a message to those who are nesting that we expect more and there will be negative consequences unless more is achieved. We are setting the bar higher for everyone. Perhaps we've been too conditioned by the recession, fear, and the implosion of print that we have come to expect too little from everyone. Woe is me is no longer acceptable here. Not my words, ladies and gentlemen, the words of one of your peers. You'll read all about it in State of the Industry. Again, keep your eyes open. If you are a participant in our State of the Industry research, I will be sending you a PDF of the entire report later this week. Thank you for making the report possible. If you are an NAPL member but a non-research participant, you will be receiving a copy of the entire report. Thank you all for attending. You know where to find me if you have questions or comments. And thanks once again to our sponsors, Canon and KBA, for making the full State of the Industry series possible and this webinar possible. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen.